What does it take to be a great leader? Today we celebrate 200 episodes of the Leadership Project, and I'm going to be sharing with you what have been my biggest learnings as a leader from the guests that have been on the show. Key pivotal moments that have changed the way that I see the world. At the end of the show, I'm also going to answer the same 4 questions that we ask the guest each week. And I'm going to announce a special competition where you can win a special prize based on your reflection of what you've heard on the show. All right, welcome back to the Leadership Project. So here we are, episode 200. I want to start with sharing how proud I am of this show and of my team that have put in all of this work to create 200 episodes of the show. To put this into context, the average length of podcasts out there is 7 episodes. Most podcasts do not get past 7 episodes. And here we are 4 years later and 200 episodes in the can. I also want to thank our special guests that come on the show each week. They willingly give up their time to come and share their gift, their wisdom, their insights, their views about leadership so that we can become the leader that we wish we always had. I also want to give a huge call out to you, our dear audience. You've stuck with us throughout this journey and you keep coming back. The show goes out to more than 100 countries and multiple cities around the world, and we love it when we hear your feedback of the episodes that have been most impactful for you. So in today's episode, I'm going to share with you what have been my biggest learnings as a leader, the key pivotal moments in the show that have made me stop, reflect, and rethink my thoughts about the world, about human behavior, and about leadership. I'm also going to answer at the end the same 4 questions that I ask the guest each week in our rapid round. What's the one thing I know now that I wish I knew when I was 20? What's my favorite book? What's my favorite quote? And at the end, there's going to be a special prize announcement for people that have been listening to the show who share your views about the show. There's going to be a special prize announced at the end of today's episode. Now, to be clear, 200 episodes is a lot. I will not be able to profile everyone that's been on the show. The truth is, I've learned something from every single guest, and I'd love to just share all of those learnings, but the show would go on for hours. So I am going to be curating some very specific moments that have been impactful for me. The first key moment comes from episode 10 with Lisa Partridge of 6C Comms. She shared with us her framework around 6 Cs and the power of communication. The 6 Cs being compassion, connection, curiosity, clarity, customization, and consistency. But that was not the key moment. Lisa was able to codify something I had always felt, and this codification has stuck with me ever since. In fact, this has become a recurring theme throughout the podcast and throughout my daily life, thinking about what it means to be a leader. And that was this statement, that people want to feel like they matter. People want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to feel valued. They want to be proud of who they are and what they do. And it is on leaders to take the time each day to ensure people feel seen and heard. One of the powerful tools that we have as leaders around making people feel seen and heard is the superpower of presence and conscious leadership. And this has come up several times during the show. I want to specifically highlight the work of Jennifer Mulholland and Jeff Shuck in episode 169, who really unpacked for us what it means to be present and to be a conscious leader. We also had Brendan Watt in episode 168, and just this week, Pam Marcheski in episode 199, all talking about conscious leadership and the power of being present. Have a think about that as a leader. Do you take the time to make sure that when you're with your team, that you're giving them your full attention? This is a high form of respect, and this shows the team that they mean something to you, and this shows them that they are seen and that they are heard. The other key element here was this point about people wanting to feel like they matter, and mattering starts with purpose. This was further solidified in episode 24 with the inspirational Kimberly Abbott of Vested. Kim opened my eyes to how millennials see the world and that having purpose and impact is critically important to the next generation. Purpose comes up again in episode 31, which is potentially my favourite of all episodes, and that was with the amazing Zach Mercurio, author of The Invisible Leader. And he showed us why purpose is so important, how to find our purpose, and how to achieve purpose alignment. I strongly encourage you to look back at episode 31. This was a huge moment on the show around helping people to find their purpose, and that purpose is typically in the service of other human beings. The next pivotal moment in the show, and I'm going to say potentially in my life, was episode 14 with Don Campbell. And Don Campbell introduced me to the world of deep listening and generative listening and the work of Otto Sharma. And it made me really think, am I really listening? Or am I just hearing what I want to hear? And I've got to say, this goes all the way through to my personal life. I've had some huge revelations from this about whether I was really listening to my wife or I was only hearing the things that confirmed what I already believed, hearing the things that I wanted to hear. I thought I was listening, but was I really listening? Huge life lessons here that I've tried to practice every day since some of these realizations. With Otto Sharma's work, we talk about 4 levels of listening. And level 1 is that. It's just downloading. It's just hearing the things that confirm what you already believe. You don't learn anything new here. If we want to truly listen, we need to unlock the other levels. Level 2, listening with an open mind. Level 3, listening with an open heart. And level 4, listening with an open will. The will to let go of things that we already believe and to imagine a new reality. This is where co-creation lives, where we can create something that is greater than the sum of the parts, where we can bring talented people around a room and have them truly listen to each other to create something amazing. The art of deep listening came back again in episode 123 with Oscar Trimboli. This was really challenging for me. I absolutely love this episode, and if you go back and listen to it, you'll hear Oscar challenge me about my listening right there in the middle of the episode, and I put it through unedited. It was such an amazing moment to think about listening from different perspectives, including about people that are not even in the room at the time of that conversation that you're talking about. And Oscar also introduced us to what could be your enemies of listening. What are the things in your mind and in your life that might be preventing you from truly deeply listening to other people? Why is all this important? Going back all the way to episode 14 with Don Campbell, it changed the way I did the show. Once I took these learnings from Don, I realized that my role was to deeply listen to the guest, to follow my curiosity and to unpack what they were saying, not to have a pre-scripted set of questions thinking about where the conversation might go before we even started. I needed to let the information flow from the guest and then follow my curiosity and help the guest get their learning out there. That was my role as the host of the show. So pivotal moment in the show, pivotal moment in my life, pivotal moment as a leader to unlock this world of deep listening. The next key theme in the show has been around becoming a multiplier and our role as a leader to be a multiplier. It started with episode 29 with Irial O'Farrell, who introduced us to an interesting concept called the manager's dilemma, where someone comes into the manager's office and they ask a question. And what do? Do we answer the question straight away? Or do we think about what response is going to serve the person, the team, and the purpose in the best possible way? This encouraged me to explore the work of Liz Wiseman and her amazing book, Multipliers. A leader does not have to have all the answers. In fact, if we gave all the answers, this would prevent our team from learning and growing and achieving their full potential. This came up again in episode 114 with Thomas Gelmy around the concept called the coaching code. How do we become a coach as a leader? And episode 125 with Mariel Talblan exploring the differences between coaching and mentoring. And to discover, as a leader, our job is to ask better questions. And I encourage you to also look at the work of Michael Bungay-Stanier in his book, The Coaching Habit, and also The Advice Trap. They both go beautifully together to realize our job is not to answer the questions. It's actually to ask better questions. The next key theme that come up in the show is around psychological safety, starting with episode 50 with Stephen Shedleski around the concept of having a speak-up culture. We also had Heather Hansen in episode 72 talking about unmuting and speaking up in a virtual world, and episode 94 with Stefan Weidner also about how we create psychological safety. A key message in all of this is the famous quote from Tim McClure, which is the greatest fear of any organization should be when their most passionate people become quiet. Psychological safety is about creating the environment where people feel that the benefit of speaking up outweighs the fear of doing so. There is no such thing as fearless. There's always going to be fear. But we need to give people the psychological safety in the space where they feel that speaking up is going to be beneficial for them and far more beneficial than any fear that they might have of doing so. Shed also shared a quote with us that has stuck with me for a very long time, and that is that it's hard to read the label on the jar from inside the jar. And he's given us this perspective where we need to help people to see what we see in them. The psychological safety theme also spun off into a topic around giving feedback. The most powerful episode related to this was episode 143 with Aga Bayer, who showed us how to cultivate a culture of feedback, how to welcome feedback, how to invite feedback, and how to make feedback as specific as possible so it's incredibly powerful. We also had episode 187 with Molly McGrath talking about how to fix my boss. So this included how do we give feedback to our boss? And the model that we spoke about, the SBIA framework, is one that you can use for giving feedback to your boss, but also to your peers, to your family, to your friends, and also to your team. We've had many episodes on the show talk about the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some of the most powerful ones included episode 59 with Martine Kalor, who really made me stop and rethink about what equity means and the difference between equity and equality. And episode 133 with Beth Ridley talking about how to create an inclusive environment. And a key takeaway here is that everyone deserves to work in a workplace where they feel included, and no one deserves to work in a workplace where they feel excluded. A sub-theme around our topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion has also been bias. Starting off with episode 27 with Dr. Alessandra Wall, she shared a revelation with me that I'll never forget, and that is that we're all biased. It's part of our human nature. It's part of evolution that drives us to be biased. But the bias itself is not the problem. It's what we do with that bias that matters. So when we raise our awareness of that bias and how it might be impacting our decision-making and our behavior, that's when we can ensure that bias is not impacting us, impacting our team, and impacting those around us. We've had other episodes, like episode 135 with Yosha Kostol, also about bias, and episode 178 about allyship with Purnima Luthra, and about how we can be a better ally when it comes to things like bias. And a really interesting one was 189 with Lisa Tromba, where she looks to unpack the power of bias, where we get bias to work for us instead of against us. This requires that deep awareness where we understand our biases, but we also understand the biases of those around us, and we can surround ourselves with people with complementary biases when it comes to our decision making. Episode 63 was another huge breakthrough moment for me, and this was around the concept of the 7 forms of respect from Dr. Julie Pham. The key message here is that everyone is different, and everyone values different forms of respect in different ways. For one person, the most important part of respect might be punctuality, whereas another person, it might be about creativity. There's all kinds of ways that respect shows up. And when we take the time to learn what respect means to other human beings, that's when we can be respectful to them. The next big theme on the show has been about persuasion and communication skills, and we've been over this one with multiple different guests. The huge breakthrough moment for me was in episode 53 with Richard Newman about how to build leadership presence. He introduced us to the concept called gravitas, and it may not be what you think it is, and about how we can be an influential communicator. He also encouraged me to go and study the ancient art of rhetoric and the power of storytelling. And I really fundamentally believe I have become a better communicator, a better storyteller, and a more influential person because of everything that I learned from Richard. I've got to share a secret with you here. I sometimes watch back this episode even now. Like I must have watched this episode on the video podcast maybe a dozen times. I watch it back to reinforce what I learned from Richard about influential communication skills.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey B2B leaders, feeling stuck in your growth journey as you've exhausted all your plays? Tired of doing things the same way and not seeing results? I'm Stacey Sussman, your host, and this is C-Suite Strategies, your podcast for the explosive business growth you've been chasing. We'll bring you conversations with industry visionaries who've truly mastered the art of scaling businesses. Get ready for game-changing insights that'll transform your approach to business growth. C-Suite Strategies is your backstage pass to reaching that next level of business. Let's make this your new reality.
Some subsets along the way have been around human behavior. If we understand human behavior, we can influence, we can persuade, and we can encourage and inspire people in a direction that we want them to go. So this includes things like episode 57 with Jeff Bloomfield, who introduced us to emotional decision making and the revelation, which is hard to accept for some people, that we are emotional decision makers and we justify things rationally, not the other way around. When we understand that, we can then use emotion in our communication in a way that encourages action. This was reinforced in episode 64 with Tim Ash that spoke about the primal brain and about when we understand the brain, we can then understand human behavior. Richard Flint doubled down on this in episode 142 with the psychology of human behavior. And all of this has been in parallel with my study of William Glass's work around choice theory, about 5 fundamental psychological needs that humans have: the need for survival, the need for love and belonging, the need for power, the need for fun, and the fundamental need for freedom. And that is freedom of choice and freedom from oppression. This governs a lot of our behavior, and you can unpack almost any human behavior against these 5 categories and go, I can understand why they did that now. It's related to one of those needs. In particular, this freedom of choice topic, the freedom of choice and the freedom from oppression, This drives a lot of human decision making, and people want to feel like they are holding the steering wheel of their life. They want to feel like they are making the decisions that influence their life and their well-being. This is part of why we say the very definition of leadership is to inspire people into meaningful action around a worthy cause because they wanted to do it, not because they were told to do it. They want to feel like they chose. When they feel like they chose this path, they will then follow that path. If they feel like they were forced down a certain path, they will resist. All of this work also encouraged me to research the work of Professor Martin Seligman, the previous head of the American Psychological Association, and also Daniel Goleman around emotional intelligence. And I still study Glasser, Seligman, and Goleman as three key people, in addition to Otto Sharma that I mentioned before, that I still research every day. Daniel Goleman introducing emotional intelligence to us and the role that emotional intelligence plays. Your EQ is a better predictor of your success as a leader and a human being than almost any other factor. Far more important than your IQ. It doesn't matter how much you know, it only matters how well you relate to other human beings. Teddy Roosevelt put it beautifully. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. A true superpower of the leader is our ability to work on our emotional intelligence. And the good news is it is like a muscle. It can be worked on. You can work on your emotional self-awareness, your self-management or your regulation, self-motivation, using emotion to motivate you and drive you into action, empathy, cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, empathic concern, and our relationships with other human beings. The next key theme that's come up multiple times in the show has been around the topic of change management. How do we implement effective change management in our organizations and in our teams? The first key breakthrough moment for me was episode 33 with Jake Jacobs, where he shared with us that there's a common misperception about change, that a lot of people think that people don't like change, but the truth is they don't like being changed. They don't like change happening to them. They want to be part of the change. He also shared with us that people fear change more than they appreciate gain, at a factor of somewhere between 5 to 10 times, their fear of change being greater than their appreciation of any gain that you're trying to show them. So if you're trying to encourage them to cross a bridge and get across to this new world, and you think it's dead obvious that, you know, there's green grass at the end of this journey, we need to go here, but their fear of loss is much greater than their appreciation of what the benefit might be at the end of that journey. And quite often, the fear of loss relates to their loss of ego and their loss of identity. Will I still be intact at the other end of this journey? Danny Longloss doubled down on this in episode 112. And I have to say, if you're going to listen to one episode, 112, Danny Longloss, the whole thing is like a highlights reel. Every moment of this was powerful. But he brought in this power of ownership, the 7 pillars of ownership, and the power of empowerment. And we can tap into this when we're looking to implement change management in our organization. And a very practical one was from Patrick Tian, episode 109, where he introduced us to the concept of a rhythm system. And that is when we're doing change, we need to have the discipline to work in a rhythm. So for you, it might be every 3 months that you're going to attempt a new change, but you need to see the course. You don't get halfway through that change and then come up with another idea and you pivot. You need to have the discipline to have that rhythm system. He calls it a think, plan, do rhythm. And then if you come up with new ideas, you go, great, let's park that as a candidate for the next change. So you've got to stop the churn of changing and changing and changing without implementing fully the change that you're already halfway through. This all helped me to create a statement that I use, it must be every day. My team might get sick of me saying this, but the concept is you hold the pen. You hold the pen. When we're trying to encourage people to change and to encourage people to take some kind of certain action, they need to feel like they are holding the pen, that they are the co-architect of this new solution, this new change, this new way of doing things. Another huge theme that's been on the show, particularly recently, has been around the concept of high-performance mindsets. It all started with episode 115 with Dr. John DeMartini, who was famous for being involved in the movie The Secret. And he shared with us the secret behind the secret that no one talks about, the truth about manifestation, about how it really works. And it's not about dreaming that $1 million check is going to land in your mailbox. It's about having a true understanding about your values and what is most important to you, and having supreme focus to avoid interference and to take prolific action. That is what manifestation is about. We then had topics around things like stoicism in episode 166 with Bryce Hanson, and the superpower of mental strength with Scott Mounts in 171. If you want to unlock a high-performance mindset, these are some of the best episodes that you can listen to. We also had episode 65 with Joel Green, where we get strength from struggle, and episode 132 with Jason Shen around cultivating resilience. This concept of failing forward and resilience becomes a superpower. Failure is part of life. The most successful people in the world, they fail all the time, but it's what they do with that failure that makes all the difference. They learn from the failure and then they go again. They apply the learning and they try again. They make little pivots along the way. A huge revelation for me on this one was from Roger Federer and researching some of his career. And it was a video that I think I saw on TikTok at one point that blew my mind. Roger Federer, potentially one of the greatest tennis player of all time, certainly in the top three, won 80% of his matches in his career. But here's the funny thing. He only won 54% of the points that he won. 54%, that's it. So he lost nearly as many points as he won. His superpower was the ability to let go. That if he lost a point, whether because he hit a bad shot or even because he got a bad line call from a judge, it was his ability to let that go and go, okay, I can't change that now. It's already happened. I need to focus on the next point. That was what made Roger Federer an incredible champion, and to be able to win those key matches and key points. So this whole thing around stoicism, about letting go of things that are not in our control and focus on the things that are in our control. Examples include, we can't change what has already happened. We can only change what we do from this moment onwards. No amount of regret can change the past. No amount of anxiety can change the future. What we can focus on is what's in front of us right now, little actions that we can take right now. We also can't control another human's behavior, but what we can control is how we respond to that behavior. So there's huge leadership lessons around mental strength and things that we can take from stoicism that can make us a better leader. Coming back to the tennis analogy, I also want to share this one with you from episode 181 with Tony Latimer, who introduced me to the work of Timothy Galway, the author of the book called The Inner Game. Tim's equation for performance is this: performance is equal to potential minus interference. So that leaves us with two levers where we can improve our performance, either as an individual or as a team. We can improve our potential. That's our skills. That's our knowledge. Or we can look to remove interference. Now, you can probably tell in the name of Tim Galway's book, The Inner Game, that a lot of the interference is actually in our own mind, where we let fear and limiting beliefs hold us back, more so than anything else. This is a great example between coming back to Roger Federer now and let's say Nick Kyrgios, where Nick Kyrgios lets the inner game get to him. Probably shouldn't pick on him too much, but let's have a think about this. He's potentially the most naturally talented tennis player to ever pick up a tennis racket, and yet he has 0 Grand Slams. Roger Federer has 20, Rafael Nadal has 22, Novak Djokovic has 24 Grand Slams because they were able to master the inner game. They were able to put the interference aside. For Nick Kyrgios, the interference happens off the court and on the court. You can see with him, particularly early in his career, if he did have that bad line call, he would not just lose that point, he would lose the game, he would lose the entire set before he was able to reset his mindset and go again. That is the difference between a high performer and someone that is talented but can't regulate their emotions. Another theme we've had along the show is about crafting your own success. And if you're looking to manifest your life and to think about where you want to go in your career, there's a few episodes like episode 149 with Ken Rusk about creating your own success. And with Dr. Benjamin Ritter, who's been on the show a few times about creating your own life, but also the latest episode where we celebrated his new book, Becoming Fearless. There's lots of mindset elements in here, particularly around having a creator mindset instead of a victim mindset, having a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. And the final key moment I want to share with you is episode 151. And this was with my dear wife, Say. We spent a lot of time together on this show, and I interviewed her about what she has learned about being a leader from the Leadership Project. And I've got to tell you, she got quite emotional at different parts of the show. And it was amazing to see in front of my eyes to unpack and revisit the journey that she's been on as a leader during this time that we've created the show together. I really encourage you to watch that one back. It was quite emotional for me. It was emotional for her. And I do believe that you will learn a lot from it. So what have I learned about being a leader from all of these episodes? Firstly, it is my job to create the environment where people can do their very best work. An environment where people feel seen, heard, and that they matter. That everyone deserves to work in a workplace where they feel included. No one deserves to work somewhere where they feel excluded. Our job as a leader is to be a multiplier, to empower, to enable, and to energize, to inspire people into meaningful action because they wanted to do it, not because they were told to do it. In our toolkit, one of the most powerful things is to be present, to make sure that you are present and you're mindful. Our listening skills, to make sure that we're truly listening and not just hearing what we want to hear. Our ability to ask better questions and to ask questions without judgment. That we don't have to have all the answers, but what we do have to do is empower and enable our team and ask them better questions. That our mindset is everything, that we need to overcome our own limiting beliefs and fears, to unlock a creator mindset instead of a victim mindset, to have a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. About the power of resilience and failing forward, that it's okay to fail as long as we learn from that failure and that we put that learning into practice. And the power of focus, that when we are focused and we remove distraction, we can be prolific as a leader and prolific as an individual. Okay, now the challenging part. I'm going to ask myself the same 4 questions that I ask my guests every week. And I've got to say, doing this exercise right now, I realize how difficult some of these questions are. So first of all, what's the one thing I know now that I wish I knew when I was 20? It's that I didn't have to have all the answers. It wasn't about how smart I was. It was about my ability to relate to other human beings. Emotional intelligence, being a multiplier, being curious, asking better questions was always far more important than what I individually knew. What is my favorite book? This is a tough question, so I'm just going to go with a recent one. So I've been reading Mindset by Carol Dweck around this concept of having a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. It's been really enlightening for me. What is my favorite quote? I'm going to have to cheat here. I've got at least two. Maybe I have more. The first one comes from Aristotle, and it is about emotional intelligence. Anyone can be angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, for the right reason, in the right way, to the right degree, that is not easy. That sums up emotional intelligence for me. And the final one is an African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And this really sums up this concept of being a multiplier and co-creating solutions with people around you. And finally, how do people find me? Well, I do hope that you've already subscribed to the show. We also have our YouTube channel, The Leadership Project, where we share the video podcasts. We share our curated videos every week, and I also do a weekly live stream show. I would love it if you could get in contact with me. I love talking about leadership. If you've got any question, any topic that you want to see us cover in the show, you'll find me almost drop everything to have that conversation with you. I just live and breathe this stuff around leadership and psychology. And you might even ask me a question I've got no idea about, but it's going to stimulate me to go and do research, and we'll have a wonderful conversation where we'll probably co-create the solution together. So please do reach out to me on LinkedIn, and please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Leadership Project. Now, finally, the competition I mentioned at the start of the show. I'm very pleased to announce that we're going to share a special prize for one lucky listener to the show. What we want you to do is go on your preferred platform. It could be LinkedIn, it could be Facebook, it could be Instagram, it could be YouTube itself. And what we want you to do is create a post where you help us to celebrate the 200 episodes of the Leadership Project and share which episode has been most impactful for you and what leadership lesson you took away from it. One lucky listener will then win a prize that includes a curated collection of some of my favorite leadership books from guests that have been on the show. Please make sure that you tag me at Mick Spiers and tag the show, The Leadership Project, when you create your post so that we can find it. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you again for joining us. I want to thank again my team, Gerald Calabo, Faris Sadek, Joanne Goes On, and my dear wife, Say Spiers. There is no way that we could have gotten to 200 episodes without your amazing, unwavering support. You've just been incredible. Thank you to all our guests that have been on the show throughout these 200 episodes. And thank you, our dear audience, for being with us on this journey. In the next episode, I'll be joined by Andrew Barry, where we'll be unpacking the interesting concept of adaptive intelligence. Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mickspiers.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spiers. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.